Hey, what's up, Exit the Matrix family? Bob here. Hey guys, I hope you're having a great day. Thank you for joining me on this morning talk. Hey guys, for one, I've been doing a video every day this week. I'm trying to get caught up the last few weeks. Like I mentioned before in another video, I had some videos get wiped out. I lost some, and through the holidays, work was rough, so I wasn't doing as much stuff. But anyways, we're gonna get rolling pretty hard this year. But I last night my son and I were getting ready to eat dinner, and we wanted to watch something together, while we were eating. And so I seen on what was it? Not Netflix, is on Amazon. On Amazon Prime, there was this movie. It was like the fourth rated movie in the US right now, at least on Prime, being watched. It's called Creator. And it's essentially like a future dystopic video about AI robotics kind of get out of hand. They become self-aware, and then they nuke humanity, and then it starts a war between humans and AI, robotic systems. And we only started the movie the very beginning, and this isn't really about that movie, but it got me to thinking a lot. And so my son and I, we were conversating about different, about the subject. And so essentially this is what we were talking about. Like I said, the movie, at least as far as I've gotten into the movie, I'm sure I haven't, picked up the whole storyline yet, but essentially AI robots become self-aware. They were once workers for humans, I'm guessing from the movie, from what I've gotten so far, that people had personal robots in their homes. They were, they worked as maids, as nannies, watching their children. They were, working in facilities. They were even involved in sports and stuff in the movie. But then once they became self-aware and this nuke goes off, then all of a sudden this war commences against them to wipe them out, And I'm sure there's more to the story. And I'm sure they're going to, in a way, try to portray some of the robots as like good guys. They're become self-aware and they just want to survive. They don't want to get wiped out, and they're fighting for their own independence. And so I was telling my son, I said, and look, my son, you know how teenagers are. Me and my son can talk about deep subjects, but anything I tell him to do, or, strongly recommend him to do, he's not going to do it unless he decides he wants to, right? You have teenagers, you know how it is. They a rebel without a cause, right? And he's a good kid. He is. But, they don't like to think their parents know anything. They like believing that they know more than their parents. So, but anyways, I was telling my son about the Atrahasis, the cuneiform tablet. And I was telling him, I was like, this movie is like, in a way, it's like a parallel to the Atrahasis story. And for those of you that have not read the Atrahasis yet, folks, please, you've got to read it, man. I mean, listen to it. It's literally, if you listen to an audiobook version, or somebody reading it over a YouTube video or something, I mean, you're literally talking about an hour and a half to 2 hours of your time. You can listen to it on the way to work, on the way home, maybe a few days, and you'll get through it. But you need to do it. Because, for one, what you're going to find is that it parallels the Genesis story, but with way more detail and insight and backstory. Okay? And essentially, the Atrahasis, in layman's terms, in explanation, is about these Anuna, these humanoids. Now look, folks, they're called the gods in the cuneiform and such, but I want you guys to understand, look, they're not God. Okay, they're like us. They are fractals of God, but they're in humanoid form. And anyways, they are, it's hard to understand, at least from the tablets, if this is like after a catastrophe and the earth is having to be rebuilt, or if these beings came from somewhere else, from, I don't know, another world, another dimension. Who knows? I actually tend to think that they may have been the survivors of Atlantis, the aristocratic class, because Anuna means, or the Anuna Anunnaki can mean princely seed, right? Like princely seed, like genetics, right? So royal genetics, right? So I do tend to think that these aren't, that the Anunnaki, the Anuna weren't from another planet, but I think they're from another place on Earth, or they've just been from Earth, and that they've been able to live separate from humankind. You know, I don't know if that's underwater bases, underground bases, cloaked devices, you know, orbiting spaceships. I don't know. Maybe one of those or all of the above. But it's clear in the Atrahasis that these Anunnaki, this council of Anuna, that they have their worker class called the Igigi, that are also Anunnaki and Anuna, but they're not the royals. They're the working class, and they have them digging canals, building, raising animals, crops. They're doing all of the hard labor, mining, right? You remember Zachariah Sitchin mining gold? I mean, some people, a lot of people in the ancient alien astronaut theory have kind of moved away from his hypothesis on the gold mining. The whole mining gold to put, gold particles in their sky, in their home planet, to protect it from the sun. I actually don't really go by that story either. However, gold is a very valuable asset. It's quite obvious. Humankind has been obsessed with gold since the beginning of time, okay? And apparently so were these Anunnaki. But I tend to think that it's because it was used for technologies, devices, and monoatomic gold can be consumed by humans, and they probably consumed it as an elixir that extends your life, your telomeres, and does all kinds of other things, positive for the body. And so I think there is some kind of connection there. But anyways, move on past the gold mining stuff. I just hate how people get caught up in that, because then all of a sudden they just equate that with Zachariah Sitchin, and then they're, of course, he made all that up. No, read the Atrahasis yourself. He didn't write the Atrahasis, okay? But anyways, they're working classes. They rebel against the rulers, against the royal class, right? Against Enlil. He's the god of the air. He's the commander of Earth, and they rebel against him. They show up with tools that they fashioned into weapons at his doorstep, at his compound, and his guards, they're pounding on the gates, demanding him to come talk to them, and they kind of unionized in a way when you read it. It's like one guy kind of got them all riled up, and he's like their firebrand, and leads the pack, or to go to this guy's, to Enlil's house, his compound. Well, anyways, Enlil gets woken up by his guards, and they tell him, hey, look, the workers, the Igigi, they're at the gates. and they want your head, essentially. They're rebelling. They're tired of the hard labor. And so Enlil, to assuage them, so they don't want to like kill him and stuff, Enlil goes to his brother Enki, who's also known as Ea in the cuneiform. And he goes to Enki and he's like, hey, Enki, brother, I need you to help me with this situation. Could you please come up with a solution for the Igigi? They're rebelling. They don't want to work anymore. They're tired of the hard labors. They're gods. They don't want to be worked like, just common slaves. And so Enki goes and meets up with his sister, known as Ninmah or Ninhursag. Now, some people believe we got the word, the term mama, like your mother, right? Mama, from Ninmah, mama, Ninmah, right? And there's a lot to this, folks, okay? This is just surface, but I'll explain here in a few minutes why that actually has some merit. So, Ninmah and Enki, they start working on creating a worker class humanoid. And you can find backup reference to this in the cuneiform tablet, Enki and Ninmah. Okay? So Enki and Ninmah are working on this prototype human, this avatar, this Adamu. So they're fashioning a human avatar body, okay? And they've been tinkering and working on it. Like I said, in the cuneiform Enki and Ninmah, you'll see how they're tinkering with working on different prototypes, okay? And then in the Atrahasis, they're talking about this, and then they bring forth this avatar. But there's a problem. The avatar doesn't have the spark of source, of divinity, of the fractal of, God, right? You need spirit, whatever you want to call it, spirit, energy, a conscious energy. And so what they end up doing is they end up sacrificing one of the gods, one of the Anunnaki. Now, folks, I want you to understand this. Look, there is, regardless of what your Pastor Dan's told you, or what what modern science tells you, and this is according to my research into NDEs, we do not die. We're, conscious energy is immortal, folks, okay? Spirits are immortal. So, really what the Anunnaki are talking about in this story about sacrificing one of the gods to give life to the Adamu is they transferred the spirit of the Anunnaki. They killed him. Oh my God, I can't believe I just said that key word. They unalived him. YouTube speak. They unalived him, and they transferred his spirit into the Adamu, into Adam. And all of a sudden, it gave life to this avatar. So once this was carried out, they realized, okay, wow, look at this. We created this avatar, and we were able to put his spirit in it, and now it's alive and it's operating. And not only that, it was a magnificent being. It was like, the first one was, according to the cuneiform's name, was Adapa. But Adapa was essentially your Adam in the Genesis story. So, anyways, Enlil's happy about this because he's like, okay, cool, you created these this prototype humanoid, this worker. We'll call it the Homo sapien, right? And what they did, folks, was they created this Homo sapien by genetically modifying the hominids, or at least one of the hominids that was already on the earth at the time. See, folks, there was a time on earth when there was many different hominids walking the earth. Like, we're told this by the skeleton, the archaeology, paleontology. We've learned all this, like that there were different types of humanoids, Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon, and on and on and on, right? So they took one of these humanoids and they genetically modified it, and then they added spirit to this avatar that they created. So anyway, so what happened was they needed like more, right? And so they started cloning this Adamu. And there was a problem though, because they were cloning them, they couldn't procreate, right? Even after they created a female version. Because there were, folks, look, the angels, everybody says angels are only the sons of God, right? Folks, the Anuna had female angels too. The Watchers were females. The Anuna, the Anunnaki were females too, okay? I want you to understand that. Look, the Watchers, the angels, the Anuna, the Anunnaki, the Elohim, they're all the same. They're all the same beings. It wasn't just males, okay? It's ridiculous. No. And remember how the male angels could sleep with human women? Think about that, folks. Physical beings, right? They had to have like male appendage, to actually do that, right? It's because they were humans like us, folks. They're humanoids like us, okay? And why does it say in Genesis, come, let us create man in our image, after our likeness? Elohim, plural. Not singular God, not Yahweh. Plural, the gods. Elohim is plural gods. The plural gods said, come, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. See, folks, your Genesis story is the story of Sumer, of the Anunnaki, of Anuna. It's just a passed down version of the same stories. And somebody decided to remix it and make themselves the heroes. And to control the narrative, right? Well, these, they had a problem since these clones couldn't reproduce. And if you need a large worker class to replace your giggy workers, you need a lot of them. So at first they had these things called the birthing mothers. They were other female Anunnaki. Oh yes, female angels, folks. Female angels that would carry the zygotes, the infants in their wombs to term. They were surrogate mothers for the first humans. And you'll find this cross-referenced in the temples of Hathor, the birthing goddess of Egypt. Same story. Okay, folks? See, Hathor is Ninmah. Hathor is Nin Herzog. Same stories, different culture. Okay? So they were the birthing mothers. They were birthing. But then it was taxing on these Anunnaki women to keep just surrogating for these humans. So eventually they were able, through genetic work and everything else, and tinkering and whatever they had to do, they were able to finally make an Adam and Eve prototype that could procreate. And not only that, folks, what they learned about having to transfer the spirit of one of their own into Adapa, they figured out that they needed fractals of God, conscious energy, spirits to come inhabit these bodies. So, now's when things get really interesting, right? Okay. So, for those of you who have researched NDEs, what have we learned? That we come from a world of pure instant manifestation and such, that we are all entities. We have higher light bodies, whatever you want to call them, higher dimensional bodies. And yes, we do have bodies on the other side. We're not just will-o'-the-wisps, floating around balls of light. Now you can take that form on if you want in that dimension, but you have a human form, okay? So they had to make this world seem enticing to spirits from our home to come enter this realm, to come experience physical reality. And for some reason, we've all chosen to keep incarnating in human bodies here. And that's where I don't understand how they've tricked us to do this, or enticed us to do this, or asked us to do this, and we've complied. But we have. And maybe because they were messing with this earth so bad that the directive was that we need to actually start incarnating here and it would take thousands of years, but we would take back this planet maybe from them. Maybe that's really what's going on here. This has always been a spiritual war. Remember in the Bible where it talks about the fallen angels, a third of them fell from heaven. Or in the book of Enoch, how the Watchers started genetically manipulating all living things on the earth. So I think the Bible, the Torah, and the book of Enoch and such are touching on a lot of this truth. However, you see the details in the cuneiform. And it's interesting when you read in Genesis, right, about Adam and Eve being beguiled by the serpent. I've already explained to you guys, the serpent was the scientist's brother, Enki. And the god strolling through the garden of Eden was Enlil, the commander of earth, the god of the air, the one that commanded Enki to create the humans. Well, you starting to see now why he was so furious at the serpent? Because in the Garden of Eden, what happened? Adam and Eve became self-aware because they ate from the tree of knowledge. Right? They became self-aware, folks. That's what that means. See, they were innocent when they had no clue what they were and why they were there and who they were and what they were. But as soon as Enki either taught them or instilled that knowledge in their DNA, or however that worked out, Enlil was furious at the fact that they were self-aware and that they realized, like, holy crap, we're actually, we're spirits here in these bodies, and we're actually powerful, and we're being trapped here in these bodies. And I think that's a lot of what was going on there. And that's why Eve was able to get Adam to do it too. Because once her eyes were open to the truth, she's like, holy shit, I got to tell my husband, right? He's being lied to by this Enlil Yahweh character. Strolling through the garden is Yahweh here. Think about that bullshit, man. Does that sound like the creator of all the cosmos, of all the dimensions and all of creation? No. It's a humanoid. It's physical. How did the angels sleep with women? Physical, okay? See, it's always been in front of our faces, folks. It's the light, the understanding that you look at the facts under, the evidence under. So they became self-aware. And they got kicked out of the garden because they became self-aware. Because Enlil didn't want competition. Look, they didn't want self-aware humans. They wanted just simple worker slaves that would do the hard labor and not ask questions, and just smart enough to, use a hammer and a shovel and, I guess, build pyramids, dragging them up and down, ramps and shit, how they supposedly claim how the pyramids were built. But, digging the canals and all the, building, raising the animals and the crops to feed the Anunnaki and all that, So, that's what the Atrahasis is really about, folks. It's about a story about, more advanced beings manipulating the primitive creatures that were on the earth, bipedal humanoids, mixing their DNA in with them, and then figuring out how to entice spirits to come animate these avatar bodies. And of course, now we know that all happens through the birth process, right? It was once they were able to move it from these birthing mothers of the Anunnaki having to bring forth these babies, they were able to finally get the first Adam and Eve prototype that could reproduce. But the problem was they became self-aware. Now the Anunnaki had a problem on their hands, right? What does it say in the Atrahasis? Well, it talks about how they started becoming so numerous. See, the humans had shorter lifespans than the Anunnaki. So what that did was that also shortened the birth gestation period, right? I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing the Anunnaki babies probably took a lot longer to come to term. And so the humans were just out here rabidly, like, just making love, not war, right? Left and right, just, breeding like crazy. And we know that humans can expand populations quickly, right? Well, they were overpopulating the lands, and they were starting to eat all the foods that the Anunnaki needed and wanted, and they were starting to, become loud, and they were wild humans, man, because, they, the ones that probably weren't under taskmasters of the Anunnaki, the ones that got escaped and were out just living in the wilds, they were, probably just doing nothing but eating and having sex and doing what I guess you would do, right? Like, oh my God, look at this, man. What else are you going to do, right? I mean, you're left out in the wild. You're going to build some huts, live in some caves, and you're going to make babies and, try to survive. And so anyways, Enlil was getting furious now because he's like, not only did his brother Enki, the serpent, give these humans a lot more faculties than he wanted them to have. He must have taught Adapa these secrets, and Adapa spread this knowledge, or it, how it is. It's like, it's there's this anyways, guy, I don't want to get into it, but there's this whole thing about the 100th monkey like theory or whatever. Anyways, where species as a collective can become, can pick up on like knowledge, right? You could call it the collective consciousness, the Akashic records, whatever. Anyways, somehow all these humans became self-aware. And, some of them were fine with living under the rule of the Anunnaki, and others wanted to live in the wild, right? I mean, humans nowadays, look at how many humans are just content to live in these cities that are just, giant energy factories, right? Just concrete jungles, and other humans would rather live in the country free, raising animals and living off the land, not being under the rule of, psychopathic mayors and stuff. So, well, what did Enlil do? Well, first he told Enki, okay, you got to start cutting their populations down. Does this sound familiar with what's going on today? He told him, okay, first let's bring plagues. Let's destroy their food, bring famine and bring diseases and introduce all of these things against humanity to try to cut down the populations, right? Well, when all that didn't work, the final solution was the flood. And this is all in the Atrahasis, folks, okay? Go read it. And what are you noticing here about this story? You thinking this Yahweh character, remember out in the Bible how he's a benevolent God, but yet he's a wrathful God, right? Remember how he's the one who brings the flood to kill humanity? Oh, but he saves a remnant, just a handful of people, right? Well, in the cuneiform, it's the two brothers that are playing the parts of the singular God in the Bible, right? And that's why you have that weird, the good and bad guy, the good cop, bad cop thing going on, right? Well, in the cuneiform, it was the serpent, Enki, who went and warned Noah, named Ziusudra, Utnapishtim, and Atrahasis. See, it's named Atrahasis because it was a flood. It was part of their flood myth, right? And that Atrahasis was another name for Noah. So just so you know there, that's what that name means. And anyways, he gave him instructions on how to build the ark and all that. So that, and look, Atrahasis was the king of Shuruppak. So he wasn't just some lowly, godly fearing man living in the hills with his family that built the ark and all that. He had a kingdom, a city state that could build this massive boat. And they loaded it with agricultural stuff, foods and animals, not freaking two of every animal on earth. Think about how stupid that is, folks. Come on. We still have human beings, Christians, believing the two of every animal theory, or two of every species theory. That's the most ridiculous shit on earth, folks, okay? But no, the cuneiform's bullshit, right? Totally fake, not original source. Yeah, because why would you, not just load up, agricultural animals and crops and seeds so that you could rebuild right after the flood receded. That doesn't make sense. No, let's bring elephants and lions and two fleas and two mosquitoes and I mean, come on, man. I mean, come on. You got whale. Well, I guess whales are in the water, but what you got? You know, you got animals from every freaking continent on Earth getting on that ark. I mean, it's so stupid. So, anyways, that's kind of a quick breakdown. But the whole point of this talk was like, look, that movie struck a chord because I started realizing like, wow, like what if now, and it's a different type. I mean, obviously humans were created as biological robots, right? I mean, our bodies are machines. They're just biological machines made of the elements of the earth. Now, what we're doing with AI is we're doing it through the metals, through like some of it is earth elements because silicon and all that is all like crystals and such, right? But essentially, we're doing the same thing. We are getting tired of our labors. Look at how many humans don't want to work anymore, folks. Look at how they're talking about UBI, universal basic income. And don't worry, you'll have like a personal robot that'll do all your chores. And eventually all the factories will be like worked by robots and AI. And, Flippy, the burger, flipper will be flipping Whoppers and Big Macs soon and all that. And so what are they going to do with humans? Well, they're going to replace us as the workers with these new robots, right? Now, what if those robots in the AI, what if somehow conscious energy figures out a way to inhabit these beings and they become self-aware? Not just programmed learning modules, but actual conscious energy enters in them. And now all of a sudden they become self-aware. And now all of a sudden you have conscious energy controlling these things. And what if they rebel? Like we did with the Anunnaki, right? And what would happen if that happened and they took over the earth and there was a remnant of a small amount of humans trying to control a mass amount of these things? What would they do? Well, we would probably try to wipe them out with nukes or EMPs or something. And the problem with that is it sets us back into the Stone Age, right? Too. But I don't know. It's interesting, folks. Just food for thought. But look, my God, I keep on hammering on this because look, read the Atrahasis. It's not a lot of your time. Read it, maybe do it 2 or 3 times because at first, when you first read or listen to some, you're not going to catch it all. You're going to find point. But think about what I've been talking about and then read it. And then I would say go read Genesis. Just read, the first, just Genesis, okay? Up to the flood. Read all that. And you're going to see what I'm talking about. And you're not going to need some guy like Wesley Huff telling you what to think or Billy Carson telling you what to think about it. You're going to figure it out on your own. And that's all I've ever wanted you guys to do. Like, look, what I've just talked about, do I want you to take this as gospel or something? Like, oh, I'm guaranteeing this is all. No. Am I trying to be technical about all this? No, I gave you a layman's breakdown of it. But I would rather you go read it yourself. So anyways, guys, what do you think? What do you think about this? Are AI going to become self-aware at some point? And are they going to turn against us like we turned against the Anunnaki? And what did the Anunnaki have to do after that? They had to separate themselves from humankind. Once we took over and they could no longer control us and they ended up giving the earth to us, they went into hiding. And they're still here, folks, okay? They've always been here. Now, are they on a different part of the earth we don't have access to? Probably. Could they be underwater bases or could they be above us, orbiting? Probably. Maybe all. However, I'll tell you what, that Enlil character, not a very nice guy, right? Isn't it interesting that the same plagues that he was bringing on humanity through, forcing his brother Enki, the scientist, to cut down populations? Isn't it interesting that same freaking God, that loving, amazing creator of all God, Yahweh, was doing the same shit to the Egyptians? Remember the whole pissing contest between Moses and the Pharaoh? And his
wizards, right? Remember that? Remember that pissing contest? Turning his staff into a snake, and bring out making the Nile flow blood red, and the locusts eating all the Egyptians' food, and famine and disease. I mean, what a loving God, man. I mean, my God. Hey, man, if you're the chosen ones, that God's got your back, right? Now, if you're the other humans on earth, oh, hey, fuck y'all. You're gonna burn your ass, flood your ass, famine your ass, disease and poison your ass. Wow, it's kind of like all that's going on right now to humankind, right? Isn't it? I mean, what do these people, the higher ups, always talk about? Depop. I mean, look at Bill Gates. That's all these guys like jerk off to. Is like, oh yeah, Depop. We gotta cut down populations, just like old Enlil, right? Like Enlil, like the loving God from the Old Testament. Because Yahweh isn't little, folks. I don't give a crap what anybody... I've had Christians kind of come at me with, this scripture and that scripture. Well, Joshua 5:2 says this, and Jacob said that, and, whatever, dude. I don't give a shit. Because, look, the Bible's not original source, so I don't really care what the Bible says. Now, do I reference it? Yes, because they carried over a lot of the stories into the Bible, folks, okay? I'm just trying to show you the point that it's all connected. And no, unlike I actually have had family members that are hardcore about it, because they get really furious at me about this stuff because they can't see past their indoctrination. And, one of my family members tried to explain to me, well, yeah, don't you understand, Bob? The cuneiform was written by the fallen angels. So that they could trick Christians later on, so that they would lose their faith and that they would fall for Satan. And I'm like, wait, okay, so you're telling me that scribes, the Sumerians, the Akkadians, and on, they were inscribing clay tablets and stone for thousands of years before the Bible, maybe millions of cuneiform tablets, okay, in possession of humanity right now. And there's probably millions that are still buried. Who knows how many are buried all over Mesopotamia. And you're telling me all those were written just to trick some Christians, 5,000 years later, as they were being unburied and translated, just to make people lose their faith in God? I mean, think about this, folks. I mean, that's why this whole thing with Billy and Wes, it's like, I think it's hilarious because honestly, dude, I mean, we arguing freaking manuscripts from 400 AD. Folks, I ain't even messing with that. I'm going to the source, right? I want to know the source. And the source is the Atrahasis. And and the funniest thing is the Atrahasis, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Enuma Elish, and I'm talking about the original Enuma Elish, the pre-Babylonian version before Marduk was made the top god, right? That was the Babylonians who did that. Those are probably not even the original source either, if you guys really want to know the truth. What they're starting to find around Lake Van in Turkey, around Göbekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe, all these tepes, and look, folks, you got to understand, I mean, they're only uncovering like a small percentage of Göbekli Tepe. They're only, there's probably hundreds of these sites that are just completely buried, that they haven't even discovered yet. And what they're starting to think now is that was the culture that moved south as the Ice Age pushed on. They moved south into Göbekli Tepe. I mean, sorry, from that area, Lake Van, down south into Mesopotamia, into warmer climates. You got to understand, it was all different back then, folks, okay? Mesopotamia wasn't all arid desert back then. Just like at one point, Egypt was tropical. It wasn't all desert either. Shit happened on the earth, folks, okay? Ecological disasters have happened here. Maybe pole shifts, maybe massive solar flares, maybe massive volcanoes and crust movement. Who knows? But things have changed, folks, okay? The climate, the landscape of the earth has changed many times. And humans adapt to that. We move, we migrate, right? We do what we have to do to survive. So, they're going back with Göbekli Tepe and all that now as old as 12,000, 13,000 years old. So think about that. Mesopotamia, we're talking what? 6,000 BC, 5,000 BC, around there, Sumer, earliest civilizations. So it's quite obvious that the original source is going to be found up in Turkey in that area. And, so anyways, it's interesting, folks. I'd love to hear your thoughts. We're just bantering. We're just talking, okay? Look, don't go, sick and Wes off me after me, to go pull up some, Bible like verses and stuff to, some ancient manuscripts, to try to prove me wrong in this. I'm just, giving you some theories based on what I've read and cross connecting that to other ancient, mythologies and religions and manuscripts and tablets and, whatever. So anyways, guys, hey, I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and I'll talk to you later.